What is up? What is up, IDP Army? We are back. It's your man, Jordan Rains. We have another episode of the IDP Army podcast. I'm joined today by Joe Herboth at Fantasy Joe on the Twitter sphere. Joe, how you doing?
Doing pretty good, man. Excited to be here.
Yes, sir. We have an awesome show today. We are going to be doing, it's that time of the year. We're going to be doing an early ranking show. We're going to be breaking down the top 12 defensive ends coming into this next season for IDP Fantasy Football. Defensive ends, defensive linemen. We do defensive linemen. Just quick disclaimer, we do everything. We do most everything through sleeper designations. So there will be 3-4 outside linebackers in this group. Those are defensive linemen, playable players on most platforms. If you're not playing on sleeper, number one, fix that, play on sleeper. But yeah, so that's what our rankings will be going through, and we will start those soon. But Joe, how's life, man? It's been a couple of days.
Yeah, pretty good. Had the weekend off, so got snuck in a little bit of golf. It was pretty crappy weather here, but yeah, I'm excited to get back at it and start another week.
Yeah, it rained pretty much all week here, so it was not good. I thought about golfing today, but I'm sure it's all wet. So, in news, the Jets did extend the franchise tag, or extend Marcus May. So he's going to be there this next year. He's one of the highest paid safeties. That's kind of weird to me, but if you remember last year, week 1, he was the number 1 defensive back. So there's still going to be some value there. I'm interested to see how Saleh uses him. He's a guy that's probably a little low right now for me in the index that I'm going to bring up a little. But and then I saw that the Texans signed Neville Hewitt. Hewitt's a little bit underrated linebacker, but right now the Texans have like 40 linebackers. So Zach Cunningham, and then after that, I have really no idea what they're going to do. So I wouldn't say stay away from Hewitt. I would say monitor Hewitt. Any thoughts on that situation before we kind of dive into the rankings?
If I had to take a stab, I would put it on Hewitt. I think they're basically Whitney Merciless doesn't exist now. I saw they restructured his contract. I don't think we got to worry about him kind of mucking up the works. So yeah, if I had to guess, it would be Hewitt. But yeah, it's a bit of a risky play there outside of Cunningham.
Yep. All right. Well, y'all, appreciate you being here. If you have any questions, anyone in the live stream, we'll try to get to those at the end. Make sure you like, subscribe, thumbs up. If you're on the Apple Podcast, give us a review. We've got a few nice reviews on there. We've got a lot of 5-star reviews. We really appreciate that. It helps the show. And yeah, we appreciate you, IDP Army, and we're going to get you to what you came here for. So let's just quickly run them through our top 12. This is consensus. We each have our own top 24, but we worked out the consensus for our top 12, and they are as follows. Top 12 early defensive linemen or defensive end rankings for this year. We have TJ Watt at 1, Chase Young coming in at 2, Nick Bosa at 3, Myles Garrett 4, DeForest Buckner 5, Aaron Donald 6, Joey Bosa 7, Montez Sweat 8, Brian Burns at 9, Zadarius Smith at 10, Danielle Hunter 11, and then Shaquille Barrett coming in at 12. So this is our composite. We both have TJ Watt as the number 1 guy. Joe, what about TJ Watt? People know that I love TJ Watt. They hear me talk about him ad nauseum on this show. So what about TJ Watt has really made him a player that you feel confident putting at your number 1 defensive lineman spot?
Well, he's just consistent. I mean, he's pretty much a top performer week in, week out. He's 33 impact plays last year, which is a pretty damn high number. The year before, he had 36. And he's constantly disruptive behind the line. He's just a lot of fun to watch and a high motor, and he's still getting better, it seems. So there's no one else really on IDP that I would take over TJ Watt, especially if you're, like you mentioned earlier, if we're playing the sleeper app, he gets that DL designation. So he's pretty much a cheat code compared to really Travis Kelce of the IDP side of football.
Yeah, the points per game number that he's able to pull off is, several over the next best defensive lineman. I believe last year Myles Garrett was the second best defensive lineman in points per game. He had 16, and then TJ Watt had like 20 or 21 points per game. So that's not negligible. I mean, that's a huge gap in points per game from number 1 to number 2. So he's easily the number 1 guy. If your platform doesn't let you play TJ Watt as a defensive lineman or defensive end, just go to Sleeper because they're the best. They have him there as a defensive lineman or an edge player, and that's what he is, and you should get him like that. Like you said, 33 impact plays, 36 this last year. He actually went down in impact plays this year, went up in sacks. He's gonna break the sack record this next year, I think. I mean, I'm just being completely for real. And like you said, he's still getting better. It's only his 3rd, 4th year in the league. Like, he's still on his rookie contract, guys, and he's like the best defender in the NFL. So he's been snubbed 2x for Defensive Player of the Year too. For I don't even want to talk about it. Y'all know about that too. So
and 23 tackles for loss. That is insane. That's obviously more than 1 per game, and 41 quarterback hits. I mean, he's scary good.
Yeah, 41 quarterback hits. Scary good. He's scary good. That's the best way to describe it.
That's like 2.5 quarterback hits per game.
Yeah, that's not pressures, and those are actually converted to hit. So he's on another level. So TJ Watt, number 1, easily for us. Let's go to our number 2 guy for our consensus list. We have Chase Young. Everyone knows about Chase Young. He came in last year, set the league on fire. The Washington football team made it to the playoffs after a very tumultuous season, I guess would be the best way to describe it. And he's, on a line that's full of disruptive guys. Montez Sweat, Daron Payne, who we talked about a couple of weeks ago on another show, Jonathan Allen. Their leading sack leader from the previous year, Matt Ioannidis, wasn't even able to play this year, Ryan Kerrigan. So what about Chase Young for you has given you the confidence to put him at your, up here in our rankings? I think, what do you have him at? You have him as your number 2. I actually have Nick Bosa ahead of him still. But what about Chase Young gave him the edge over Bosa for you?
I just like the energy the guy has. He has a super high motor. I mean, he kind of played 770 snaps this year, which is kind of on the low end. He did miss 1 game, so that's kind of what did that. But he scored 197 points. Nick Bosa scored 216 his rookie year, so he was just right behind him. And really, I just like what the Redskins have there with Montez Sweat on the other side and Daron Payne in the middle. I think Chase Young's in a great spot to continue to build off of his rookie year, which was already a top, 5 defensive lineman season. So I think he's just going to continue to build on that. They're going to be a lot of fun to watch. He's an exciting player, and I think especially with the addition to 17 weeks, I think he's a guy that can put some serious sack totals up this coming year, especially playing in the NFC East. I mean, he's got some prime candidates there to, get in the backfield and take down with Daniel Jones and Jalen Hurts.
Daniel Jones.
He's got probably 6 sacks just in those, 2 quarterbacks right there.
2 games. Yeah.
3 fumbles.
Yeah, 3 fumbles at least. He forced 4 fumbles as a rookie, 4 pass deflections. Like you said, 700 snaps. That's a lot. Or, there's a little bit more you could have. That's pretty high for a defensive end, though. But he had 10 tackles for loss, which is not a massive number. Montez Sweat, who played about 100 less snaps than him, had 12. So for Chase Young to finish as high as he did this last year, he was a top 10, or he was a top 15 defensive lineman finisher. Let me see here. I have that right here. Here we go. He finished as defensive lineman 15. He played about 80 less snaps than Montez, or 80 more snaps, but it's crazy. He was able to put himself in the top 15 as a rookie. And like you said, he missed games, and he did have a little bit of an injury part of the year. So yeah, I like him there. I think there is definitely upside on the bone. I think this last year, honestly, is kind of what we could look at for him as a baseline, which is saying a lot, but I mean, he came out as a rookie. He had the impact plays, 22. He had, he didn't have an obnoxious amount of sacks, so you can't really say he's going to regress in his sacks. I mean, he only had 7.5, so he's got a lot of room to go up, which is what you like to see for a guy as a rookie coming out. So, yeah, I think 2 is a good spot. That's where he is in our consensus. Let's move on to number 3. Number 3 for our consensus. Number 2 for me is Nick Bosa. With him, it's kind of the similar story with Montez, or not Montez Sweat, with Chase Young. We all know who he was coming out. His brother Joey Bosa had already been in the league for a little while, and he delivered, as a rookie. 2 pass deflections, not as many as Chase Young, only 1 forced fumble. Okay, but he did have 16 tackles for loss. That's plenty right there. Almost pushed up into that 50 at combined tackles. He had 47, which was more than Chase Young had. He had 44, and he had more sacks. He had 9 sacks. Was it 9, 9.5? 9 as a rookie. So we know that he can finish his sacks. We know that he can get behind the line of scrimmage and produce with those tackles for loss, like he said. And his tackle floor is pretty damn high for a defensive lineman. I've talked about this a week or two ago. 50 for me is kind of the threshold for a guy. It was when we were talking about DeForest Buckner, actually. 50 is like that threshold for me where I feel confident playing a guy weekly, knowing that if the sack doesn't come, if he can get 2.5, 3 tackles, that's going to be about what most defensive linemen get this week. So I can manage that.
Yeah, and I mean, with Bosa too, in his rookie year, if you watch, like, he kept getting better. I mean, he did develop as the season went, and after the halfway point of the year is really when he started showing up, and he's got a lot of tools, and I could see him being a top 5 defensive lineman for a decade.
Yeah, it's crazy. You look back. I got this graphic pulled up here, but 2019, Nick Bosa and Max Crosby were both top 10 finishers in tackles for loss. Rookies. That's kind of wild to think about, honestly.
Yeah.
But that just shows you the kind of numbers that he was able to do just coming out. Now, we did see him playing with DeForest Buckner that year. DeForest Buckner has since moved on, who we are going to be talking about very, very soon because we are both very high on DeForest Buckner. But let's go ahead and move on down the list to Myles Garrett. So this is probably coming into last year, he was pretty much everybody's number 1 overall defensive line player, defensive end, he or Danielle Hunter. I'm cooling on Myles Garrett a little bit just from a narrative standpoint, but I still, he's still a tier 1 defensive lineman. But I do have some questions about how he produces. That's why he's a little bit lower, I think, in both of our rankings, honestly, coming in for me as my defensive lineman 4, and also for you as defensive lineman 4, defensive end 4. Why do you put Myles Garrett behind these other guys we mentioned? And I'll kind of explain to you why I have done that as well.
Well, I'd like to see his tackle floor kind of get a little higher. He did have a career high in tackles last year at 48, but I would just like to see him, that number bump up a little bit for him to be in that elite, top, which he already is top 5, but to press up to Bosa, Chase Young. I'd like to see more tackles out of him. But he is he is still a star. He had 12 tackles for loss. That's kind of, that's okay, but would also like to see him get behind the line more and actually finish the tackle. But 23 quarterback hits is pretty good, and he's got a pretty steady pace on sacks. Last year, 12.5. I mean, the last 3 years he's had over 30 plus sacks. So you got to like the sack floor that he has.
Yeah, the sack floor definitely helps make up for a little bit of the tackle floor that he does not seem to possess. We're talking about Myles Garrett right now, like I said, number 4 on both of our consensus list. Yeah, I mean, for me, it comes down to the auxiliary stats. So when I look at him in the Ultimate IDP Index, his highest season of impact plays was 2018, and that was 22. And 22 is good, but that's not. I mean, we were talking earlier, about TJ Watt, who had 33 and 36. So, just that alone right there, that's a big discrepancy. That's a big discrepancy in impact plays from ceiling to ceiling. So you're talking about Myles Garrett as a ceiling right now, a known ceiling of 22 impact plays. And we know that TJ Watt has a known ceiling of 36 impact plays. So, the ceiling's a little bit lower. And then you look at other guys like we just mentioned, Chase Young and Montez Sweat, who we're going to bring up soon. 22 impact plays from Chase Young. We had 22 impact plays 2 years ago from Nick Bosa, and we had 22 impact plays for Montez Sweat this year. So all 3 of those guys have the same impact play upside that we know as Myles Garrett. But Myles Garrett's been in the league 3 more seasons than them. So that kind of tells me that there's more upside. Now, Myles Garrett has had a bit of a checkered situation. You know, he missed some time because of injury. He missed some time because of, you know, getting kicked, or, you know, what's the right word here? Suspended for attacking another a guy, which is fine. You know, it's football. You know, a little rough housing. No one really likes Mason anyway. Rudolph. I was, you know, as a Steelers fan, I was honestly wishing that Rudolph would get suspended. But anyway, so, you know,
Well, and
that
last year too, he actually had COVID. He missed a couple games because of that, and
this is true.
he came back and he said, you know, it drained him of energy for weeks after. So, you know, that's something to kind of factor in too for his end of season, you know, results.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just in the quarterback hits too. I mean, he's putting up 18, 18, 18, 29. He had 29 in 2018. But then again, you look at some of these other guys, Nick Bosa, 25 as a rookie. You know, Montez Sweat, 20 this last year. Chase Young, only 12, which I find really interesting about Chase Young. But I think that'll obviously come up a little bit. But I don't know. I just have some more questions about Myles Garrett. You know, I know as a player and as a physical human being specimen, as a social media sort of icon, he definitely has everything going for him. He's got the Browns fandom. You know, he's got a lot of things going for him, but in actual IDP fantasy football, I am not as high as him as I once was. So that's why he comes at number 4 for us in our early rankings here. So we'll move on to player at number 5. So at number 5, this is the first time where we don't have either of us really have decided this guy is actually there on consensus, but my number 5 is Montez Sweat. Joe's number 5 is Darius Smith, but our actual consensus number 5 is DeForest Buckner. Now, DeForest Buckner, for anyone who doesn't know, he's coming up before Aaron Donald in the defensive tackle position. That might rub some people the wrong way, but it really comes down to the tackle floor that he provides. You know, DeForest Buckner is pushing up to about 60, 65 tackles a season. Aaron Donald's barely sniffing 45 a year-ish. So, and as a boom-bust interior lineman, that position, I want to go with the guy who's going to have more every week versus the guy who has a similar ceiling. You know, the ceiling between Aaron Donald and DeForest Buckner is not that different. And actually, I'm just going to go. So if you're looking right now, if you're on the YouTube, which I recommend you watch, we're looking at DeForest Buckner's 2020 season. 58 tackles, 9.5 sacks, 17 impact plays, 10 tackles for loss, points per game, 14.6. Now I'm going to pull up Aaron Donald's 2020 season. 45 tackles, 13.5 sacks, 20 impact plays, 14 tackles for loss, 14.1 points per game. So on points per game basis, DeForest Buckner outperformed Aaron Donald last year. Yes, Aaron Donald had more impact plays by 3. Yes, he had more sacks by 4. But he was a good 12 and a half tackles behind DeForest Buckner. And that makes a difference, you know. And the style of impact plays they're making makes a difference too. And the quarterback hits make a difference. So at the end of the day, this last year, DeForest Buckner had a better season than Aaron Donald. He's got the higher floor than Aaron Donald. He's younger than Aaron Donald. And he's still an ascending talent in my mind. It's crazy to me. I look at his career, no all pros, which is insane, you know, but Aaron Donald's a shoe in every year for all pro defensive tackle. So shame on whoever is not voting DeForest Buckner into the all pro team. But what are your thoughts on DeForest Buckner? I know you're high on him as well.
Well, yeah. And actually, I was just looking it up, what you're saying. Last season, Aaron Donald had 9 games where he scored under double digits per game. And DeForest Buckner only had, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 2 of them were 9.5. So his floor is a lot better. Sure, when Donald hits, you know, it's going to be a pretty damn big game. But per game basis, DeForest Buckner last year was just slightly better in. And yeah, I think his floor is so much higher than Donald's that just slightly edges him over Donald for me. And that's what you want out of that position, especially defensive lineman, because, you know, a lot of weeks you don't want that, you know, like Donald has, you know, 62 snaps in a game and put up zero points in fantasy. So that's not what you want. But when he goes off, he makes up for it.
Yeah. Put that in your pipe and smoke it, haters.
Yeah. But yeah, though, that tackle floor is nice. And I mean, outside of, which I think we have 3 in a row, they're all 3 interior linemen, you know, with Buckner, Garrett, and Aaron Donald. So it's pretty impressive that these guys are this impactful from the inside. It's kind of rare, but we're starting to see it a little more often now too at the same time.
Yeah, some. All right, so let's just talk about him. Our next guy on the list is Aaron Donald. We've kind of already brought it up. I don't need to gas up Aaron Donald. Everybody else does that. You know all about Aaron Donald and how he's Defensive Player of the Year this year, even though it was one of his statistically worst seasons of his entire career. But they won't tell you that. But yeah, he's just a shoe-in for Defensive Player of the Year. No big deal. Draft him if you want. That's great. He's a good defensive tackle. He's my defensive tackle 2 behind DeForest Buckner. He's 29 years old. They did just change up their defensive coordinator again, but he's been successful through multiple defensive coordinators and coaches, so I don't have any concerns about that. Again, with Donald, what you're getting is pretty much the hopes of double-digit sacks, the promise of 12 to 20 tackles for loss, and 20 impact plays, but you're looking at a guy who's probably never going to break 50 tackles in his career. So the floor will be lower. If you do draft him, make sure you build your defensive line with some guys like Harold Landry, Sam Hubbard, that can balance out the boom bust nature of Aaron Donald with a solid tackle floor. So any more words on Aaron Donald, the reigning Defensive Player of the Year?
Yeah, he's overpriced. I mean, you see him in fantasy drafts and leagues. It's just too much. I mean, you have to get him so early, and for what you're getting, you can get much later in drafts with Zadarius Smith and guys like that. So in my opinion, there's no reason to pay up for him. But if you're a fan and he's who you want, go ahead and reach for him. But you can get guys a lot later that overall throughout the season put up very similar numbers.
Yeah. And I mean, I am kind of talking a little trash on his tackle floor. He has hit 59 in 2018, but 2018 is like the year everybody thinks that Aaron Donald's every year was 2018 when he had 20 sacks, 60 tackles, 25 tackles for loss. Like, that's what I think everybody thinks we're just living in this perpetual bubble of. And the reality is his production. I mean, the pressures are there, all that. I mean, I'm not saying he's not amazing. I'm saying he's not what he has been. And if you just look at the stats, he's not putting up what he used to. And he just got a Defensive Player of the Year as essentially his second worst year of his career. So whatever. Moving on. Number 6 on our list. Oh, this is actually number 7. Speaking of which, we're going to take a quick break. What's good, IDP Army? It's Jordan Rains, and quickly I want to tell you guys today about the big project I've been working on, the Ultimate IDP Index. The Ultimate IDP Index is the #1 resource for IDP fantasy football players, rookies or veteran for 2021. Inside, you're going to find contract information, tiered IDP rankings, detailed player production profiles going back to 2017, suggested trade values, and a whole lot more, including unique write-ups, unique videos that will only be available within the Ultimate IDP Index. But to me, probably the most valuable thing is the fact that the trade value estimation tool is going to be updated weekly, so you'll always be aware of what a player is worth in your Dynasty League at any given moment. So what are you waiting for? Sign up for the IDP Army Patreon today. Patreon.com/the IDP Army. Join the Black Ops tier and join the IDP Army today. We are back. Shout out to the Patreons. Shout out to the Ultimate IDP Index. I am pulling information straight off of that because I use it all the time because it's an incredible tool. And if you play IDP Fantasy Football and you don't have it, you need to go get it. So sign up for the Patreon. We would appreciate having you there. Joe, you're using it. What do you think about it so far?
I love it. It's quick, easy to use, and it's pretty accurate. And I like all the
pretty accurate, he says. Get out of here.
And I like that you can kind of click on the player, and kind of get a quick snapshot of the player profile. That's super helpful for me.
Yep. It is. It shows you, what a player does, what they don't do. It gives you an idea of what kind of player you are drafting. And the next guy we are actually going to talk about is an interesting player, a unique player. Coming in for us at our number 6 spot, we have Joey Bosa. You know, everybody knows who he is. He came in a couple years ago, set the league on fire. The injury issues always seem to be the thing with him people like to bring up, and it affected him again this year. He only played 10 games, but in 10 games, he still managed to put up 15 tackles for loss. That's more than Aaron Donald did this last year. 39 tackles, which is one of the things you love about Joey Bosa is his tackle floor is super high. Impact plays, 17. Now, you look at that and you think, wow, that's incredible. Well, I just said he had 15 tackles for loss, right? So most of Joey Bosa's impact is coming behind the line of scrimmage. So when you look at another player, and that's something you see when you look at the Ultimate IDP Index, when you look at other players, you get the production profile breakdown, and you're able to see, how does this player score? Where is he scoring? When you look at Joey Bosa's production profile, he scores in 3 primary categories, 4 really: sacks, solos, tackles for loss, and quarterback hits. He does almost nothing in the assist department. He does almost nothing in the pass deflection department. One of the funniest stats of the whole NFL, I think, is how Joey Bosa has 2 pass deflections in his entire career. Like in his entire career, dude's played 63 games, and he's only managed to put his hands up and bat down 2 balls. That tells you that when you're statting him out, when you're projecting him for his plays, he's not going to do that. Like, I can say that Joey Bosa will not bat a pass. That's a good bet, and then you go look at a guy like Aaron Donald, nothing crazy, but he's got 12. Even his brother, Nick, who's played 1 season in the NFL, 14 games, has 2 pass deflections. So when you look at these production profiles, you're able to look at different players and say, okay, this skill set I can attribute to this player. This skill set I cannot. So Joey Bosa, while he does look really, really good on paper, and he does score points, if his points aren't coming in certain spots, they're not coming. So that's my only cautionary tale with Joey Bosa. That's why I have him a little bit lower than I really believe he probably should be. He's at 7. On a week-to-week basis, he scores points per game, one of the highest in the league. But again, for Bosa, it comes down to availability. We know he has struggled with injuries. He has only played 2 complete seasons in the NFL. He has played 5 seasons in the league. So that's always been an issue, and I think it's just going to be something you're kind of going to have to deal with. But when Joey Bosa plays, he's a top 5 defensive lineman, defensive end every single week. He's got a tackle floor that is crazy. He's had 70 tackle seasons, 67 tackle seasons. So he's able to make up for the fact that, maybe his impact plays aren't coming all over the field, but he's getting consistent tackles. He's getting consistently behind the line of scrimmage and getting you your sacks. So yeah, what are your thoughts on Joey Bosa this year? He's our consensus 7, and I think you have him on your actual rankings. You have him down at 10, so you're a little lower on him than I am.
Yeah, strictly because of the fact that he is kind of just one-dimensional. That his disruptiveness is behind the line, and that's it. I mean, he does not drop back into coverage hardly at all. When he does, his last 2019, his passer rating was 118.7 when he dropped back. So he's not doing that, and he misses tackles. I mean, last season he missed 13. 6 missed tackles, 9 the season before. So in 2 years, he's had 15 missed tackles. So that's points he's leaving out there that you want. But he is elite still, like you said. But yeah, there's some more guys that I think that are more well-rounded. And then also you factor in that injury, history, that it's a thing now. I mean, he's been in the league 5 years and he's only played 2 full seasons. So I feel like that's kind of something that you can have some substance to. But he's a lot of fun to watch. But yeah, like you said, there's really only one thing he's after, and that's the quarterback, or maybe a tackle behind the line.
Yep. So, and yeah, I mean, he's a top 10 guy. He'll probably has a chance to finish. He has a chance to finish top 3, top 4, especially if the sacks fall his way finally. His biggest sack season has 12 and a half. So if he can get a little higher, he can get 15, 16, 17. And with this extra game, we are going to see guys get higher numbers just in general. And Joey Bosa is the kind of guy that takes over a game. So he could get a late, week 17, 3-sack game, 4-sack game that puts him over the top. So yeah, I love him. We're a little lower on here. Consensus, he's our defensive end 7. For you for 10, he's 10 for you. He's 6 for me overall.
Well, and I just wish, it's hard to knock on him just for that. But like the, Los Angeles Chargers, Los Angeles Chargers. They just are not a good team to manage, their defense. They just waste so much talent, I feel like. And I would love to see him somewhere else. Is basically what I'm saying. I think he would even perform at a higher level if he were on another team.
Yep. You're agreed. All right. So coming in at number 8 for us, we have Montez Sweat. Montez Sweat's one of my favorite players. Wrote about him last year. He was one of my favorite players coming out of that class with Josh Allen, Max Crosby, and all them. Yeah, I mean, he's kind of underrated in my opinion, although people are kind of catching on because he's playing next to Chase Young. Chase Young's got the bigger name, right? But when you really get down into it, he played about 80 less snaps, I believe, than Chase Young did. He scored more points than Chase Young. He does. This is one of my favorite things, auxiliary stat wise, is passes defended. He actually gets those. He had 5 this year. And, 3 of them directly led to interceptions. One of them he caught and took back for a touchdown. And then one he batted up and Deron Payne got an interception. And another one he batted up and John Bostic got an interception. So these are really meaningful plays, and this is not like we're not like indicting Joey Bosa, but when it comes down to an all-purpose defender, a guy who can do it all, Montez Sweat in my eyes is a guy who's really ascending. And I have him higher in my rankings than our consensus. I actually have him right above Joey Bosa. I think that his career trajectory is looking good. I think that the price that you have to go to get him right now is always going to be suppressed because he's playing next to Chase Young. And because of that, you need to go capitalize ASAP because there's no reason to wait around on guys. That's one thing a sentiment that I could not get behind last year was, I kept hearing people say, well, I want to see Shaq Barrett do it again. I want to see Shaq Barrett do it again. I'm like, he's like 26 years old. He's a 26, 27-year-old pass rusher and you just saw him do it. So what are you waiting for? You're going to miss another good season just to see him do it. Okay. And then what's the cost of acquisition after 2 good seasons? You have to believe in something eventually. So Montez Sweat, if you need to see it again, guess what? As someone who's holding a lot of Montez Sweat, I'm not giving him to you if anything happens again. He's going to be on my team forever, just like TJ Watt's on all my teams forever. So
and like you're saying, there's still people that don't know that they don't think of Montez Sweat as a top 10, top 15 guy, but he is. The name isn't there, but the production is. And if the time is to get him, because once you get Montez Sweat, you'll never really sell him, or you shouldn't, because you'll never get what he's worth because he's not that big name. And the only reason that he was a little lower on my list is, with what Washington's doing, they have a lot of studs. So there's a lot of guys, a lot of mouths to feed on that defense. That's the only thing that was keeping me from ranking him just a little bit higher. But yeah, you go ask a lot of people that do play IDP, who put up more points, Montez Sweat or Chase Young. Most of them are going to say Chase Young. And it's not the case.
Yep. Amen. Amen, brother. All right. So let's go ahead and keep it rolling. Next on the list after Montez Sweat is another guy that's pretty new in the league. A lot of people like Brian Burns, coming in at number 9, defensive end for the Carolina Panthers. Really came on strong last year after an up and down rookie season, really. The thing I like about Brian Burns is not just him, but it's his whole team. The whole Panthers team just seems to be trending the right way. They don't seem like they're in a big rush to get there necessarily. 9 sacks for Brian Burns, 21 quarterback hits this last year. Those are good. And one of the things I really like about him is the tackle floor. I feel like we've kind of circled back to the tackle floor conversation a couple of times now, but 58 tackles this last year, and I said 50 is kind of an elite threshold. 58, he was pushing up into that, close to that 60, and he only started 14 games last year, played in 15. So he could have and should have passed that 60 marker. So Brian Burns for me is an ascending talent, a guy who most people know who he is. He flashed, especially when Jeremy Chin, I feel like they had that young thing going last year. But Brian Burns for me, definitely a top 10 guy this next year. I don't really see a world where he can fall under that, especially with the kind of the safe floor that he has. What are your thoughts on Brian Burns?
No, you hit the nail on the head. And he's got, with his tackle floor, he's still got room to increase that. Last year, he missed a game. He didn't even, one game he didn't start even. And I liked too last year that he had 4 pass deflections and 3 forced fumbles. So he's pretty disruptive. He's not just a tackle monster. He's also making pretty big plays for his team. And I think he's only going to get better.
Yep. And that's what you're looking for. You want to get these guys as they're breaking out, not after a breakout or during. I guess you can kind of get a guy during a breakout. But yeah, I mean, Montez Sweat, or not Montez Sweat, Brian Burns. He and Montez Sweat were 2 guys I wrote about last year on Dynasty Nerds that I said, is after their rookie seasons, when everybody had eyes for Max Crosby, Nick Bosa, Josh Allen, I said, these are guys you could probably sneak in and we're going to see their value go up. And here we are, into this show, and I haven't heard Max Crosby's name, Josh Allen's name come up. Nick Bosa has managed to, even though the injury got him, stay pretty high in everybody's rankings. So, yeah, Brian Burns, let's just, throw out some theoreticals here. I've got him in the index right now as a buy and someone I'd be willing to give a second round plus for, plus being a throw-in piece of some type. Does that seem fair to you, or what are your thoughts on Brian Burns? Is that a little high? Or?
Yeah, no, I think that's pretty fair. I think it's going to be tough to get that just because a lot of people aren't as intrigued on him as they should be. He's not quite a name yet, but the production's there, and he should be. So at this point, it's the time to buy him. And because of that, you can get him for a lot less than that, I think. But he is worth that.
Really?
Especially from a lot of standpoint of, in a lot of IDP leagues, even if these people have been playing for a few years, some managers have an issue like figuring out they undervalue IDP, especially at the defensive lineman position. So it's a lot easier to get these guys when you're offered an offensive player and they're not valuing the defensive lineman as they should. So you could probably get this guy. I would almost bet for someone like Jamison Crowder, or Cole Beasley. I bet you could easily get this production. And he will, his value will go up, or his name will go up, because he's going to produce for several years to come, I'm sure.
Yeah, you kind of brought up something we can venture off in here quickly is, managers undervaluing their IDP players or overvaluing certain IDP players they may have. For instance, I feel like people overvalue Derwin James relative to other players you can get for much less, but Brian Burns is a player that, like you said, I think people maybe will feel like they can replace that production, but I really don't think what you're trying to replace if you think that, because the tackle floor that he has exhibited is extremely high. There's only a very small handful of defensive linemen who can push up into that number with any sort of expected consistency, I guess. And also provide you with elite sack upside. Brian Burns is one of those guys. And if I hear this a lot from guys, especially people who've played IDP for a while. There's this it's arrogance kind of where it's like, well, I just flip all my IDP guys and I just stream everybody. I'm like, okay, but we've talked about this, you and I, many times. It's like you're streaming positions, guys that they're going to put up close to the similar production. If you're getting minus 2 points of production per every IDP slot that you're playing, and you're playing 11, do the math. You're averaging a minus 22 against everybody in your projections, right? You're not telling me that the 2 or 3 offensive players that you added to your team are going to add 22 points to what you're going to get this next week. You might bump up your projections 4 to 6 a week, but you're sacrificing more than I think you realize. And I think a lot of people just overestimate their ability to stream guys. There's like, oh, I'll just stream and IDP people will talk about streaming all the time. I'll just stream the position.
Especially defensive line.
Yeah. And I think that might be a position you could maybe get away with it a little bit more, but at some point you want to have starters in your starting lineup, right? Like that's what I try to do personally. I like having really great players in all my starting spots. I don't like streaming any positions. So I've always felt like streaming was more of a headline grabber. You know what I mean? Like oh, stream, people I hear, especially, I mean, no shade at the ballers, but sometimes I hear them talk about streaming guys like Ryan Tannehill. And I'm like, Ryan Tannehill, what do you mean? He's streaming right into my starting lineup week one.
Yeah, he's rostered. Folks.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, what world is this where these things happen?
Yeah.
Where you
I
can
mean, streaming for me, it's a contingency plan. It's not my plan A. It's a good plan B, and being able to do that is a way to have an advantage if you're good at it. But it shouldn't be your plan from the get-go at all. It's a great success for failure.
Yeah, way to prepare to lose.
Yeah.
I like that. That's a good point. All right, well, let's move on past Brian Burns. Our number 10 consensus overall guy is Zadarius Smith. Guy kind of gets perennially forgotten about, but is one of the league's best pass rushers. Anyone in Green Bay will tell you that. Tackle floor is a little bit lower than you'd like, but with his ability to consistently produce, get behind the line of scrimmage, like I call him the silent assassin here in my little write-up on him in the index, because you really never hear about him, and then boom, he shows up and somebody's on their back. 4 forced fumbles this last year, which doubles his entire career total, which he had 4 previously. Before that, he did put up past 50 tackles this year. I didn't really realize that.
Yeah, that's back-to-back years too. And I think what really keeps his name out of people's mouths is just he's in Green Bay, and no one talks about Green Bay's defense positively. So I feel like that's one thing that's kind of keeping his name, a little lower on people's lists than he deserves, because he's putting up the numbers. He's there.
Yeah, like you said, nobody says anything positive about the Green Bay defense. All people want to talk about is Aaron Rodgers and is Devontae Adams.
Well, and you look too. I mean, he's getting not just solo tackles too. I mean, he's able to get some assists, which is pretty surprising from a guy like him in his position. You don't usually see that a lot.
No, you're right. He really is doing a little bit more than I thought. 18 impact plays this year. That's a career high, or 20. Sorry, 18 the year before. Yeah, I mean, I've got him as a buy right now in the index, and I've got him as a second round pick as far as a rookie pick. Does that seem fair to you? Does that seem a little heavy handed, or?
No, I think it's fair. But like I said, this is a guy where you probably won't have to pay that at all. But that is what he's worth. That's what I would sell him for. But buying, he is the name that you can get for a lot less, I would think.
Yeah. It's funny. We need to make everybody wants to talk about trades. We need to do a Kelly Blue Book. There's the dealership price if you're bringing him into me. There's the price I'm pushing him back out to you.
Which is more, which is higher.
Yeah, which is higher. You sell them to me for 10, I'll sell them to you for 20. And then there's
price immediately goes up, but as soon as he drives off the lot off my roster,
he's old, busted. Yeah.
Plummets.
But if you want to do a deal with the guy, at the gas station at 7-Eleven, you guys can maybe work something out too where everybody wins. I'm not those everybody wins trades.
Yeah.
Not for me. I like winning.
Yeah, we could easily do a whole show on that. Oh,
yeah, I know. Dude, people are wild in the trade world. Wild. It's not even just wild in the trade world. It's wild some of the shit people talk in trade world.
Oh, well, coming from the godfather of shit talking for trades. My God.
Well, I mean, some of the stuff like don't even.
Your go-to line is, hey, bro, what do you want for this guy? And then, I give you an idea and you say, I don't want him. He's shit anyways. Why would I want him? I mean, he's terrible. And then you send an offer anyways.
Yeah, but then 6 months later, you trade him for me for that price because I planted a little seed in your brain.
You did get Montez Sweat from me this year, which was surprising. Although, I mean, Fred Warner, I know you're low on him, so I think I got him at a pretty good price.
Fred Warner is the most special linebacker in the NFL. I'll leave it at that.
We'll see. That's where we differ, but we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see what. What is there to see? Another LB2 season for him?
Yeah, that wouldn't be bad. I wouldn't be opposed to that.
Yeah, I mean, line him up. All right, who we got next? After Zadarius Smith, we got Danielle Hunter. Okay, guys, this is a little bit tough because Danielle Hunter hurt his neck last year, like degenerative disc, something. I don't know. It was a really weird situation. He ended up not playing. Everybody loves Danielle Hunter, and there's nothing not to love, except for he only has 3 pass deflections in his career. His highest impact play total is 23. Again, we brought up earlier that TJ Watt has back-to-back over 30 seasons. 70 combined tackles. Now, that is the thing that makes Danielle Hunter money in IDP. Because like we said earlier, there are only a handful of guys that can really even push into that 50 area. There's even smaller group that can get up to 70. Danielle Hunter did it in back-to-back years in 2018, 2019. That's Joey Bosa. That's him. That's Sam Hubbard kind of territory where you're getting up there with your efficiency at tackles and you're offering upside other places.
Oh yeah, well, his tackle floor to have that tackle floor and to have that sack floor is very, very rare. That's what I mean. I think we have him probably a little lower than we should. After I looked at the rankings, it's like, wow, this guy could easily be a top 5 at the end of the year. But he's kind of fallen out of our minds a little bit from missing the entire season.
Yeah, I mean, I think 11 is appropriate-ish. If he has a season where the sacks don't come, he does have the tackles to get you a reasonable season, but the impact plays for him are just really not there. And they all come like Joey Bosa, they're tackles for loss. He's got 6 forced fumbles in his career. He's played in the league 5 seasons, 3 pass deflections. So you're not getting anything over there. So what do you mean? He's got 2 touchdowns and 3 pass deflections. Like he's almost like, how do you project either of those? You know what I mean? He's got a safety too. So it's just like what he does is just so sporadic in those other departments. You can't really project much happening there. So you can get the tackles for loss, which 21 and 15 the last 2 years. So what's that? It's going to average him out to about 17. And let's give him 3 other ones, 20. That's on a great season for him. He's going to have 20 impact plays. There's just other guys that are going to do that. Now, again, the tackle floor is higher, but what if things change, and we've seen players go from high numbers like that. Khalil Mack, who was not on this list, he actually came in as our consensus, I think 13 or 14. But, when he played for the Raiders, he was almost like a similar profile to Danielle Hunter, 70 tackles and 12 to 14 sacks. And then he goes, to the Bears, which again was a little bit different, but he's just not the same player. Like he doesn't put up those kinds of numbers anymore. He puts up like 50 and 9 or 10 now, and some guy, and doesn't mean he doesn't get the same amount of pressure. Doesn't mean he's not affecting the game the same. It's just something's just not clicking the way that it was. Something around him is a little bit different. Maybe he is focusing on the pass rush more because of an injury or something. And we don't know what Danielle Hunter is going to come back with this neck thing. We don't know. So there is a level of concern there. And I think that's why we have him as a low-end defensive lineman, defensive end 1 this year. These are early rankings. Again, if everything's coming out of camp positively, trending the right way, you could see him come up a little bit in both of our rankings, I think. But for right now, I feel comfortable at 11, and I'm avoiding him. I don't have him on any rosters, and I don't really want him on any rosters, if I'm being completely honest. If you could,
I didn't realize he was so young. He's only 26. I feel like Danielle Hunter's been around for feels like 8-9 years.
Yeah, well, he has been around since 2015, so that's a while. Yeah. So, any parting thoughts on old Danielle Hunter here?
No, I'm kind of with you on the avoiding. He does intrigue me. I actually have hit up plenty of fantasy managers of his because when you have a player that missed an entire year, a lot of times you can get them pretty cheap because they're kind of, what have you done for me lately? And a lot of times fantasy managers want to move on from a guy after a year where they got nothing out of him. So if you can get him for the right price, yeah, I definitely would go out and do that. But yeah, I wouldn't really, if they're off, I don't know that I would give up a 3rd rounder for him. So yeah, it'd have to be a pretty good value to go at him. But it could pay off huge if he's healthy. He could pay off big time.
This is a buy low. I've got him as a 2nd plus right now in the index. So 3rd, 2nd plus. And again, you are the one taking on the risk. You're taking on upside, but you're also taking on risk with him. So
and think for me, I try to think, all right, if I'm gonna give up a 2nd rounder for this guy, where would I be looking at in that 2nd round? So my 2nd rounder in a lot of leagues this year, I tried to get Micah Parsons. So a lot of people think that's a little early, but so would I trade Micah Parsons straight across for Danielle Hunter? No. I wouldn't. I would rather have Micah Parsons. So that's kind of how I look. I don't just now if it's a future pick where you have no idea where you're going to land and you don't know much about that future draft, that's a little more reasonable. But if it's this year's draft, I think that's a little high for me for him.
Yeah, fair. And it's rookie season. It's rookie fever season. So those seconds, they're more expensive now. And like you said, we're putting names on them now. They're not just
tickets. When you don't apply names to a rookie pick, it's much easier to get that rookie pick. But once there's a name applied to it, the value goes up.
Yeah. The reason I have them in the index is because it's like money. Money is just a medium between an exchange of goods and services. That's kind of how I view picks in fantasy, because a pick isn't worth shit. I mean, it doesn't score you any points, but it can get you a guy that scores points in different ways. So, and it fluctuates in value, kind of like money does. It goes up and it goes down. So that's how I look, especially for offense to defense. It's kind of like changing currencies. So I like to look at it through, okay, he's a second plus. Okay, what kind of offensive players am I paying a second plus for? When I can categorize it like that, then I can look at, okay, these are the players on offense that I view similarly to what I view Danielle Hunter. And then that's how I give people kind of trade advice. So I'm like, look, this is a guy that I think is worth a second-ish. I mean, Mike Williams for Danielle Hunter, that feels okay.
I'd smash accept that.
For which one?
Hunter.
Which side? For Hunter. Okay. See, But to me, I like Mike Williams. I think, with Herbert there, and he played hurt all last year, and we've seen 1,000 and we've seen 10 out of him. I know, but I'm saying, that's what I'm saying. You wouldn't pay more than a second for Mike Williams right now. So
Correct.
That fits into that conversion. So that's kind of how I do it. But y'all need to check out the IDP Index. Before we get to our number 12 defensive end, defensive lineman guy, our last one of the early rankings, we're going to hit you guys with one more sponsorship. What's up, IDP Army? It's your man, Jordan Rains, interrupting the show quickly to tell you guys about a new sponsor of the show, Monkey Knife Fight. If you haven't checked out Monkey Knife Fight yet, you're definitely going to want to do that. Let me tell you what they have to offer, all right? Monkey Knife Fight is daily fantasy sports gaming website for casual sports fans that is simple and easy to use and easy to play. The users determine which superstars competing for the day's professional sporting events will record more or less than a contest provided. Monkey Knife Fight's daily fantasy prop games play similar to salary cap-based DFS games, but without all the algorithms, the lineups, and most importantly, the sharks. You guys got to go try this at IDP Army, okay? Monkey Knife Fight is like our brand, like the IDP Army brand. It's disruptive, it's forward-thinking, and they are definitely where we play daily fantasy sports. You guys should too. Get started today with a 100% instant match bonus up to $50 if you use the promo code IDP Army. That's only for the first time or new depositors only, but hopefully you guys are getting in there, winning some money, having a good time, and make sure whenever you guys get in there, and if you do win a little bit of money, which is what we want you to do, take those winnings, go sign up with the Patreon.com. That'll get you into the IDP Army Patreon, where you can check out the Ultimate IDP Index, the Discord channel, and all that other good stuff. So, IDP Army, you know what to do. Back to the show. We're back, IDP Army. I never left. I don't know about you, Joe. Nope. Well, number 12, defensive lineman, early rankings, we have Shaq Barrett. Y'all already know that I love me some Shaq Barrett. 57 tackles. You've heard us go on and on about how great tackles are. He's got a high tackle floor. 8 sacks. That's basically half of what he had last year. And he still finished as a defensive lineman 1. So people are like, oh, he's not going to have 20 sacks. Well, no one said he was going to have 20 sacks. And he repeated a defensive lineman 1, defensive end 1 season for you without even getting double-digit sacks. 17 impact plays. That's big. I mean, we've kind of gone over that. I would like to see it push up a little bit more, maybe into that, 15 to 20 range. But Shaq Barrett did not have he didn't have the defensive line tag 2 years ago. So 2 years ago, if you count up his sacks, he had 36 impact plays. All right. He had 6 forced fumbles the year before that, 2 pass deflections. He had an interception, 19 tackles for loss. He did come down back to earth, but Shaq Barrett back to earth with a full repertoire of snaps was still a defensive lineman 1, defensive end 1 in the year 2020. He came in at number 12 with 204 points. That's only 2 points behind Brian Burns and Harold Landry. And I mean, honestly, that's only what behind the number 3 overall guy is Aaron Donald. That's only 19 points less than Aaron Donald. So he had a dope season. He's going to have another one. He was one of the first guys that got extended whenever the free agency. He was like the first big free agency signing. Goes back to the Bucs. And if you watched the Buccaneers play this last year, you know that just because the sacks weren't there does not mean that he was not super impactful. There was 3 or 4 plays where he did not get a sack, where he getting to the quarterback just in general caused an interception. I know Carlton Davis had at least one. I think Humphrey had one, or Dean. And then I think Winfield might have even had one, or maybe he did or didn't. Somebody else had one. But there was 3 different plays I remember watching the season where he got in, did not get the sack, but because he whacked his arm or was right there, an interception happened down the field. So Shaq Barrett is making impact plays all over the field. When some of those do fall back to sacks, he will have, all he needed was 2 more sacks and he would have been a top 5 guy this year. So at 12, I feel like is a little bit low for our consensus. I had him
a little lower than you. I think I had him at 14.
See, I only have him 1 spot above. I only have him at 10 though. So only 2 spots up. So I really am not that much higher on him right now than where he is in our consensus, but I think that he's a guy that could be moving up my board by the end of the offseason.
Well, and him, Tampa bringing him back was super important to me on my outlook for Shaq Barrett. If they wouldn't have, I would have been a little more skeptical of the situation he'd have been in, depending on where he would have went, because we saw him play for what, 5 years in Denver, and he had more sacks. It combined he had 1 good year, 5.5 sacks in 2015. Other than that, he was almost non-existent. So coming to Tampa, is really where he blew up with 19.5 and then 8 this year. But if he had went somewhere else, I probably would have been I've probably been a little more skeptical of him and not knowing the unknown of how he would perform there, because no one saw Shaq Barrett doing what he's done in Tampa these 2 years, in my opinion.
No, and that's part of the reason why he was faded last year by everybody. The narrative around him was poo-poo on him, is because nobody saw it coming. But if you bought in, you got another top 12 defensive lineman season out of the guy, that's all you want. You know what I mean? Like, what more do you want from a guy? Sure, he didn't have 20 sacks. No one thought he was going to have 20 sacks. So, but I bet he'll have more than 8 this next year. Now I'm looking at some of his metrics here in the Ultimate IDP Index. I've got a couple of tweets here from Seth Walder. He's talking about, Barrett as an edge this season. His pass rush win rate was 10th out of 46 based on the outlines that he had. His run stop win rate was 17th out of 40. 8 sacks. And he had 9 sacks created. So I mean, he was doing a lot, and that's turnovers created as well. Like I said, to the interceptions that he caused or forced. So he's going to be a great player for you this year. Again, he's probably going to finally be at a price where he should have been probably for a while now, but at what is he, 27, 28? He's 28. He's got meat left on the bone. I mean, you're looking at 3-4 more years of high level production if he stays healthy, and assuming he doesn't get lazy now that he's been paid. So,
well, and the way his contract's structured, he's going to be in Tampa for a minimum of 3 years. So, I mean, I kind of expect this for 3 years. He's minimum that he's going to be pretty elite.
Can't understate, that Ndamukong Suh is on that interior. That does help everybody always. I don't know how long he'll be around for. Vita Vea in his own right is a unique special defensive tackle as well. So, yeah, I mean, they're set up with playmakers on that team. They'll probably draft more. They'll be bringing in more guys. As long as they stay good, guys will want to play there. So we already know that. So that rounds out our top 12 defensive ends, defensive linemen. Y'all, I'm going to read them back to you real quick. Before that, make sure you go like, subscribe, and review the podcast. We'd super appreciate it. Share it with somebody. IDP is growing. If you follow me on Twitter, you've seen that I've been tracking the percentage of leagues in Sleeper that are IDP based since the start of the season, and we're up from 12% of their overall leagues to 18% now. And that means IDP is growing at a faster scale. There's more IDP leagues being created than regular leagues anymore. and it's catching up. I mean, it will never actually catch all the way up, but I mean, we are pushing into the no longer niche. I mean, it's becoming part of the mainstream game, even if it's a smaller, roster size, 3, 4, 5, getting people in there. With what Sleeper's doing, IDP is trending the right way, guys. Appreciate everybody who's in the Army and in the index right now. Quickly, before we get out here, I'll read our top 12 back to you one more time. We had TJ Watt, Chase Young, Nick Bosa, Myles Garrett, DeForest Buckner, Aaron Donald, Joey Bosa, Montez Sweat, Brian Burns, Zadarius Smith, Daniil Hunter, and Shaq Barrett. So we will be back soon with another episode for you. We will be talking about the next 12. So we'll be talking about 13 through 24 defensive linemen. Then we'll be back with the rest of the positional rankings in the next week or two. Appreciate you, IDP Army.